All right, we are live. Hey, everybody. This is Gerald Lott, Executive Director of Sauk Valley Voices of Recovery. Um, I've been asked to step in as co-host or substitute host for Akil for Tuesday Talk. This week we have an amazing person who will be working with us to tell us her story. Recently, we had the RecoverCon conference in Dixon, and several people were brought in to give their lived experience of their experience with addiction or with family addiction or just how this thing impacted them. And one of those people that was brought to us by one of our sponsors, Shatterproof, sent some of their ambassadors to do just that, to give their lived experience. And one of them was Marcie Massa. So I'd like to introduce Marcie. Hey, Marcie.
Hi, guys.
Marcie is a Shatterproof ambassador who goes out and talks on behalf of Shatterproof and on behalf of herself. She also brought us 18 banners from Can You See Me Now? And I'm sure she'll tell us about those as well. So, hey, Marcie.
Hello, everyone.
Shatterproof and Can You See Me Now?
So, thank you. Thanks so much for having me here today. I actually came upon Shatterproof through the company that I work at. We are a national sponsor. Prior to my brother passing, I was actually affiliated with the group, which obviously God had a plan for that. They are a wonderful non-for-profit foundation. They're raising awareness around addiction, getting the conversation started. They advocate for policy change, education in the communities. They're transforming addiction treatment and most of all, shattering the stigma. So it's been wonderful for me, especially after I lost my brother, because it opens up so many platforms to be able to advocate on this much needed epidemic going on in the world. So they've been wonderful. And unfortunately, through my loss, I've also, it's fortunate, but unfortunate. I've been able to become a part of many different organizations. Can You See Me Now, as Gerald had mentioned, was founded by a mother who lost her son, Tracy Curtis Carter. She was wonderful. She did a walk. I believe it was a 5K for her son, and said to herself, I need a banner. I want to carry my son's picture. And the entire movement got started. Other moms said, I want to have my child on a photo, and I want, my kids passing to raise awareness. And next thing you know, I think we're up to near 30 banners now. Unfortunately, they can't even keep up. Thousands upon thousands of families sending their children's photos in. But these banners that I'm fortunate enough to have a set in Illinois, each banner has 150 faces of those lost to addiction. So for myself, I have banners 1 through 18. Any local events we have, we set these banners up, which is a huge task. Not only physically, but emotionally more so. It's really hard to sit back and look at all the faces, that have been lost. And it's so precious to me, because I have the privilege to carry, so many families, broken hearts, and I'm representing their children, raising awareness to help other people. So I feel very blessed.
Awesome. So Marcie, the reason, well, first of all, can you tell us the same kind of information about Shatterproof, or what Shatterproof does? And
yeah, Shatterproof. What don't they do? First off, if you haven't heard, if you're watching and you haven't heard of them, please check it out. It's shatterproof.org. They have a whole team of people. For example, I started to get affiliated with them with, oh my gosh, sorry about that. With their 5Ks. They have 5Ks that take place once a year. Gerald, are you able to hear me with that dog barking in the background?
Yeah, apparently he wants to talk about Shatterproof.
I guess he's excited too. They, throughout several states, they have 5K walks. that raise awareness to addiction, and they not only is it for those that are lost to addiction, but they're speaking on behalf of, that recovery is possible. Gary Mendel is the founder of Shatterproof. He founded Shatterproof after he lost his son Brian to addiction several years ago. He dedicates his entire life to raising awareness, and they are really working hard at narrowing down managed quality care, because that's one of the biggest downfalls with people for people that struggle through addiction. It's hard to find managed quality care. They had just founded, I believe it was last year or the year before, an amazing program called Atlas, which eventually will be in all the states. And what Atlas is, it's a team that's been brought together they put together a system that for example, eventually when it comes to Illinois, every single treatment center that is located in Illinois will be on Atlas. So if you're a family that has somebody struggling, you'll be able to go into this portal and see all the local area recovery centers, for medical, medical, because some places obviously have the medical side, some are just, for the therapies and whatnot, but it's not a system where they're giving you the recommendation. They created the system in hopes that people like you or me or anyone that's had a loved one in the recovery system, you would go on and rate the recovery center, because that's the biggest problem. It's like a needle in a haystack with locations. You don't know which place is a good place to send your loved one. And people are, struggle so greatly with that. So eventually it will be throughout the United States. I can't tell you offhand what states it's in right now, but I know there's several, but they're doing groundbreaking things. They're at Capitol Hill, fighting for policy change. It's been wonderful for someone like me to have a platform. It was the first organization I went to after I lost my brother, because it's a place where you can come to be heard, and you don't have to walk alone, whether you are a family member left behind, after losing a loved one, or just someone that's in recovery and wanting to help. The advocacy opportunities they have, the ambassador groups. I encourage anyone that's in this world that we're in, check them out, join. It's great to have a place where you can come to feel welcome, and there is zero stigma. And that's the biggest thing they're working on, hence the name Shatterproof. They're shattering stigma every day. So I'm very privileged to have found them.
Awesome. Well, I know in full transparency, Shatterproof helped sponsor RecoverCon a couple weeks ago, and took some of our video from our skydiving and included in their September Stronger Than Addiction Challenge, and put it up on their billboard in Times Square. And we really love that organization, and the people there have been nothing but wonderful to us. So
yeah, they're wonderful. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah. So let's get to what we're here for, which is, Marcie, you've been impacted by this addiction or the crisis, and I hate to have it be a show, because it absolutely is not a show. This is, from the heart. I feel for you for your loss, and I hope that people can hear that story and how it impacted you, and it'll help them to make it through to the next stage of their lives. So
thank you. As Gerald had said, my story comes with, tragedy and heartbreak. While it's always so wonderful to have opportunities like these to speak, it's also heart-wrenching for me, because I sit here today as a sibling left behind. My brother, Tony, who will forever be 42, his story is one like many. We came from a good home growing up, filled with much love and faith. We had 2 amazing parents, 3 siblings, all the love a child could ask for. But as we know, addiction does not discriminate. In my brother's mid-20s, the addiction cycle would start, and little did we know it would go on to impact us for the rest of our lives. I've often spoke many times. I give the analogy how addiction is like a tornado. As it touches down, it leaves wreckage all around you. It's impacted our family on so many levels. It's hard to put into words. Over the next 2 decades, my brother would go in and out of recovery, always wanting to beat the disease more than anything. And the thing that I have always struggled with is the stigma tells you that those who struggle with addiction don't try. Why can't you just say no, the stigma says. And I'm always screaming from the rooftops that stigma lies. Looking back now, I realize that stigma kept our family in silence. It told Tony he should be ashamed and disgraced. It told our family to stay quiet for fear of judgment. People always focus on the addiction and not the person, and that's a shame because people are so much more than their addiction. In 2017, through much research, I found a recovery center 8 hours from where my brother lived. He entered the program and he stayed there for 13 months. He didn't see us over the entire year. Worked harder than he ever had. He graduated. He was only one of 3 people to walk that stage. It was the biggest accomplishment of his life. I can't even tell you, to hear him speak at his graduation and his testimony, it's ingrained in our hearts forever. Our family felt like we had stolen him back from the grips of addiction. But fate had different plans. On May 4th, of 2019, while I sat at my son's baseball game on a beautiful sunny day, I'd get that call that would change our lives forever. For my brother, his last 3 years actually went on to be his best years. The beautiful testimony that he actually gave at his graduation, we decided as a family we would show it at his funeral. It was tough, and some people might not have understood it, but I know it changed lives, even on the hardest day of our lives, because we wanted and needed everyone to know that those who suffer really do fight. It was in those moments after the week he passed, I knew I had to make a difference for someone else's family, and sharing his story was the best way for me to do that. I didn't want his passing to be in vain. You know, when I get the opportunity to speak, I always sit back and think, I only have a few short minutes to make a difference. What is it that I want to focus on? And my broken heart always brings me back to the stigma. Shortly after he passed, I actually looked up the definition of stigma, which most people probably haven't. And it's defined as a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or a person. Disgrace was the first word that really struck a chord with me. That word is exactly how those struggling with addiction are made to feel. Shame and guilt are a huge factor of what keep people stuck in their disease. People always, I especially hear it on social media platforms, they discount the lives of those that are lost to addiction. And that's heart-wrenching for me. I hear things like they make poor choices. I hear they should just say no. I hear we should be afraid of people with substance use disorder. I hear they don't deserve to be brought back with Narcan if they're making poor choices. I hear if their parents only paid more attention to what their kids were doing. Those type of statements make me want to scream, because my parents would have given their life first off to save their son. And I can tell you right now, walk a mile in a family's shoes that have to helplessly watch their loved ones struggle through addiction. It's the hardest journey you'll ever take. My brother was the least judgmental person I had ever known. Looking back now, I've come to realize that his inner struggles are what gave him his strong, compassionate heart, because he felt his flaws so deeply that he never wanted to judge anybody for theirs. And he wasn't the only one with regrets. I sit here as his older sister with my own too. My deepest regret was that I never took time to educate myself on how much he struggled in addiction. I didn't know how the disease worked. I didn't know the statistics. I didn't know what fentanyl was, or how many were dying from addiction, or how alone that he felt. I've always said if I could have just one wish, just 5 minutes with him, what I wouldn't give to just hug him one more time and just tell him how sorry I was and how I didn't realize how alone he felt during his struggles. I can't turn back the clock, but this is why I sit here today, because I do have that chance with those of you watching. If you're struggling, each one of you that are trying to beat this disease, there are so many others out there like me that care and your will to beat it. We share our living experiences, although hard, so you don't have to feel alone. that someday less and less families will be talking about memories past and celebrating victories of recovery. We need to start recognizing addiction for the disease that it is, or countless lives will continue to be lost. I've often given the visual in a few of my speeches in the past. I talk about the Chicago Bears Soldier Field home stadium. It seats 61,000 people. Now I want you to visualize that stadium completely sold out with an additional 34,000 people on the field. 95,000 people. That's how many we lost in 2020 to overdose. I always tell people, please educate yourself to know that addiction does not discriminate. Don't think this will never happen to my child. Thousands lost each year are young adults and children that tried something just once. They made a fatal mistake. You should learn from your mistakes and you shouldn't die from them. We have to start educating ourselves. Another thing that I've spoke about during the planning of my brother's funeral, I came across a journal he had kept. The entire book was filled, thousands upon thousands of pages, and it was the hardest thing I've ever read, but it was so important for me to read it because those were his words, his thoughts, things that I never could have ever imagined, how hard he tried, how lonely he felt, how even the small daily tasks were difficult for him. He would wake up each day and write down, okay, this is my plan for today. I never understood, and it was really eye-opening for me. And I've used it so many times to tell people, because even when I've even held it up, because it's like everyone just assumes that he just wanted to go out and get high and he didn't care. He didn't care about what he was doing or how he was making his family feel. But he did. His last 3 years, he drove people to recovery meetings. He spoke at recovery meetings, even in his own struggle. And I do want to mention that it was Tony's first relapse. He purchased cocaine that had fentanyl in it. And as we know, fentanyl doesn't give second chances. So his first relapse would be his last. And it's heartbreaking. And I want to tell anyone who's here, today that's watching, if you're struggling, your family loves you, even if they're angry, even if they don't understand. And it's hard. It's really hard when you're a family member to understand, but you are worthy. Bear with them. They don't understand. And just like you don't understand, the struggles that you're going through. Together we have to make this path easier to travel. Families need more resources and support, and we need the stigma to end. Each of us here today, maybe yours, has a struggle of some sort. Maybe yours is addiction. Maybe it's anxiety, depression, food. Imagine if all those around you only focused on your struggle day in and day out. What would that feel like for you? It's staggering to me because 80% of the public views addiction as a personal failing or a character flaw. And until these views change, countless lives are going to be lost, which is why I'm here. It's more than a need for willpower or the just say no mentality. Addiction is going to require managed treatment and for the stigma to end. And Gerald, that starts with me and you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just so struck by the story, and I'm sorry I get a little choked up, but you talk about shame and guilt keeping people stuck in that thankfully has been something that I've been able to kind of short circuit, and I kind of lead with the fact that I'm in recovery, but not everybody can do that. And I meet a lot of people that want to keep their recovery on the down low, want to sneak in and out of meetings and don't tell anybody. And in my mind, secrets keep us alone and keep us sick and in dangerous situations. So
They do, and it's mind-boggling because looking back, I think like my brother, we had such a loving family. We were close. He was close with my parents and me and our other brother. And I mean, think about, it's like he had a loving family, but yet he kept it in. I mean, reading his journal was what like just blew my mind. It devastated me to my core. I can't even tell you. And I've read it probably 1,000 times since he's passed. And, you know, we're 2.5 years into losing him. But just, I mean, this is how much the stigma affects people. I mean, here he was, you know, a guy that came from a good, loving home, and he still carried it alone. So, and this is why yourself, you being in recovery, me being on, you know, that while I'm on the tragic end of it, I have to believe that we can make some sort of difference. But it's having the courage to speak about it, you speaking about your recovery and not feeling shame, telling people that, yes, you did struggle in addiction, or me. I mean, I think people were blown away. I can't tell you how many people came up to us after the funeral when we showed, I mean, he talked about his heroin use and, you know, how he started on pills, and he talked about how he didn't realize how he had an addictive personality. He just kept thinking, oh, I can, you know, stop after this time. But, you know, it wasn't easy for us to show that, but it's having the courage to share our stories that change will happen.
Well, you know, I didn't realize. I apologize. I guess I didn't realize it was so fresh that it was only 2.5 years ago. My God,
Yeah.
the work that you're doing is amazing in that time. But you know, for me, I know how many times I narrowly avoided the overdose. And you know, I never used heroin. I used cocaine, but you know, the fact that fentanyl is in cocaine, it doesn't even make sense. Fentanyl
I know.
is it slows you down. Cocaine speeds you up. So why? But um, but you know, luckily I didn't have to deal with that. But I do recognize how close to death I came on so many occasions, whether it be from ingesting some drug, or driving, or being in altercations. And the only thing I can think is that my higher power, my God, had to save me because I had a purpose. He needed me to do something. And
It's
so
so
that's
true.
kind of how I move forward with this, because there's no reason for me to be here when every decision I've made has been self-destructive. And that's where I get rid of that stigma or that shame for me. You
I
know,
love it. You turned a mess into a message.
yeah, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Now that you say it, you
Yeah,
know.
I love. I mean, what? And I love how you give that back to God, because you're right. Your purpose is not. It's not over. You know, when it's our time, it's our time, and you're using that to help others. And I do believe in that.
Right. And you know,
I mean, it's interesting you said that, because literally the day my brother went and had lunch with my parents on the day he passed, he was set to go to a meeting. They sat down. It was a great day. My parents were actually heading out of town that weekend. And literally the last words he would say to my mom, he must have been feeling really down. And he said, Mom, I'm really struggling to find my purpose. And he was working, had a good job. And my mom, you know, doing the mother thing as she always had done, because he had, you know, he was 3 years into his recovery. And she just said, you know, she just encouraged him and, you know, told him to keep going. And he was going to a meeting that, you know, the best words of encouragement you can give when your child says something like that. And I've often looked back and I thought, even though, and I prayed so much for my brother, it was really crazy to me, because a week before he had died, I kept a prayer journal, and I commute on the train. So I had written in my journal, I kid you not, the week before, and I asked God, can you please, you know, look out for Tony and please open a new door for him, because he was struggling, because he was working nights and wasn't able to make as many meetings. And I have to believe, even I do believe that God answers our prayers sometimes, just not in the way we want, because he did open a door for Tony. He knew that the only way Tony was going to, you know, fully live in peace was to take him home to heaven. And that it hurts my heart so much. But I know with that last statement he said to my mom, like, he didn't know his purpose on earth, but his purpose is still going on now, but it's going on through me. And that's why I just feel called to be his voice. And I knew it the week he died. I can't even explain it, but my heart, while it broke, it also felt on fire, because I thought, I can't, because the stigma led kept our family quiet. And I get so angry at myself sometimes when I look back, because I was so ashamed. I almost dreaded back when he struggled, because his last 3 years, it was wonderful. It was, God gave me the best gift, because as you know, when you're struggling, you're not exactly in the best place with your family when you're in an active addiction. It was tough for us at times. I always forgave him, and I'm so glad that I did. Thank you, God, because I don't have any regrets. But, I'm just so mad, because I would dread when people would say, how's he doing? And I remember my husband would, want an update on how my brother was. And I would say to him, and he could never understand it. Oh, I don't want to talk about it right now, because I'd get so upset, looking back on all these things. And I can't beat myself up. I can't turn back the clock, but I just want to encourage people, please, 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 especially if you're a family member, you've got to take the time to educate yourself. Because when I lost him, the first group I joined was GRASP online. I think it's Grief Recovery After Substance Passing. It was literally like I was sitting in my old bedroom, all the family was out. And as you know, that first week is just absolute hell after losing someone you love. And I'm sitting there reading all these thousands of families and stories and heartbreak in this group. And I didn't even know groups like this existed. And then it was through that next year of, going through my grief journey that I came upon multiple groups. And it's mind blowing. So many families with all the same stories, uneducated. They didn't know. Parents beating themselves up every day because they screamed at their kids, or, they were angry at them. They didn't understand it. And we didn't realize the statistics, or how low of a chance. I mean, the statistics are mind blowing. I just had no clue. I literally always thought my brother, like, he knows what he's doing. I never even considered him passing away. And I didn't even know at that time. I mean, 5 years ago, fentanyl wasn't around like it is now, but it's wiping everybody out. Almost, I would say 90% of all the families I see coming into the groups every day, each one has been lost to fentanyl.
It's a trap.
It is.
It's a trap. And the interesting thing is, I'm the opposite of your story. I went out in 1994 on a binge after having a huge argument with my mother and calling her all sorts of horrible names and just awful. And I went out to explore my drug world. And while I was out, she passed away. And so, the last thing that I ever said to her was pretty horrible.
I'm so sorry.
It is what it is. But, I've had to come to grips with the fact that in my spiritual belief, when someone gets to heaven, they know all the secrets that were kept from them on life. And so I believe my mother knows I love her. And I believe your brother can see the work you're doing on his behalf. And that these people, or these souls, know the love that still is there for them. And that's part of why I try to fight so hard right now to stay sober. And I love the story you told about his journal, because what I heard was that he was actively recovering. You see, there's a difference between I'm in recovery. Me, Gerald, 13 years sober, I really don't think too much about it anymore.
Right. Right.
I go to the ball game, and if the guy sitting next to me is having a beer, whatever.
Yeah.
When you're in that first few years, man, you're every moment, is this taking me closer to it or further away from it? And every decision, and to hear that he was journaling that, and it was so heavy on him. I feel for him,
It honestly, one sticks out to me in particular, in the sentence he had wrote in capital letters, and it oh my gosh, it broke my heart. But it must have been a day that he was really struggling, but it was just, please God, save me from myself. Yeah. I feel so alone. And those words have just stayed with me, because gosh, I keep saying it, but what I wouldn't give to just go back. I just wish I knew I wish I'd found that journal when he was alive, Right. I just didn't know.
But would you have been able to do anything?
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately, we'll never know. But
right. You're right.
But the work you are doing is amazing, and I can't thank you enough. And you made an impression on me uh, when we met, and I've seen. See, now I listen to God. I listen when God tells me to go left, I go left. And for the audience, Marcie and I have been connected through Shatterproof, and then in the meantime, I went to a event in Will County, and I saw the banners, and I was like, hey, I think those are like the banners that are going to be at my event. And this lady knocks me on the shoulder and goes, "Are you Gerald?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm Marcie." And I was like,
Yes.
"Oh, okay." God is definitely trying to put us together to make sure that we talk. And so I just want
That's
to,
awesome how he brings,
isn't
hey,
it?
what do they say? A cord of two strands or is stronger than, one, it just, we all have to work together. Like you said, you're on a different end of the spectrum, but all of us coming together collaboratively, doesn't matter, what organization you're from. I love when I go to these events and I see all the different organizations and the people working together, because you really do get to know people. I'm pretty much, I have found now, I know the organizations I love working with. I know the ones, because it can be, especially in the grief side, and in recovery, like there are people that are really, and I can't tell people how to feel, but they really get stuck in a dark hole. And it breaks my heart. And for me, I see a lot of it when people spend the rest of their lives extremely angry at God for their losses. But I knew myself, I didn't want to go down that path. I don't get me wrong, I had my emotions in the beginning, but I was never, not once, nor are my parents, and that's our faith, but we are not angry at God. I actually had to remove myself from a few of the groups, which there's many groups out there, just because they just want to pigeonhole you down in the darkness. So I actually I have a small group of my own online called 50 Shades of Grief. And I try to be, it's for those that have lost to substance use. And I try to be a great encouragement. Not to say that you don't have bad days, because trust me, I talk about them, but I always give encouragement even in my pain, because here's the deal. My brother would want me to live a happy life. And I'm not one of those people. I'll never tell people, oh, focus on your blessings, not your loss, because grief and blessings exist in the same space. One doesn't cancel the other out. I don't need someone to tell me how blessed I am. I know that. It's not going to take away my grief. I'm going to grieve my brother forever, but I do deserve to live a good life. And for me, I encourage others, if you're having a struggle like you in recovery or me in grief, I'm turning my pain into a purpose. You're turning your mess into a message. If you can just take your feelings and turn it into something encouraging. I mean, I'm telling you, when I have the worst day, I always go and do something kind for someone else. I don't care if it's dropping a card in the mail, sending a special text, treating somebody to something. I don't know, whatever it is. Like I promise you, when you're helping other people, you'll come out of the darkness. You just can't stay parked. Allow yourself to feel it, but you have to eventually move out of that space.
100% of the time. 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And truthfully, there are some days where I just don't want to get out of bed. And
Yeah.
it's like, ah.
Yep.
But as you said, it is that passion, that purpose that gets us moving. And a big part of what we are doing at Voices of Recovery is built upon helping people find purpose, so that you talked about your brother struggling and not having his purpose, and saying that to your parents. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, okay, I'm struggling, but I still got to go make the donuts, can get you there if you know what your donuts are. And I've met
Yeah.
people in music, and I've met people in art and sports who've said, I've had a bad day. And I say, what did you do? Well, I just went back to doing what I do, and knew that it would, what is it? This too shall pass. And I don't know, that sometimes people in recovery don't know that it will pass. They think that it's forever. And what do they call suicide? A permanent solution to a temporary problem. you know.
Yeah.
Um,
And like my brother said, he didn't, most people don't realize nobody goes into anything thinking, like he said, he just thought, oh, I could try this. And one thing led to the next. I think like heroin always has there's such a stigma on it. And this is also something I realized later, like it's not, most people, that's not like the first thing that they try. Right. I've learned, and it's like, oh, you're so dirty. Like they have a vision of someone, like my brother was handsome as all get out. And, people have such a vision of someone that would do something like that. Like they're, the scary guy living under a bridge or walking around with a needle in his arm. Like my brother was you would never know my brother, had a substance use problem. And like I told people, it starts on pills. And then, so many parents that I've met, they lost their, oh my gosh, beautiful, even beautiful girls. You would never in a million years, again, because the stigma tells you they don't look like these beautiful young ladies, but they got addicted to opioids from using Oxycontin after getting their wisdom teeth pulled. And so starts the journey. Then, they run out of a prescription. They don't feel good. People don't know the path. Then they end up finding someone that sells Oxycontin on the street. And then they start to realize, okay, it's too expensive. I can't afford, $30, $40 a pill. But the dealer will tell you, oh, but I can give you heroin for $5 so you don't feel sick. Like my brother told me once, in his recovery, because we talked openly about it, that back when he was struggling, he wasn't even using anymore. He wasn't using like, oh, I just want to go get high. He felt actually physically ill, so I think people, they don't know the whole path either. It's not like, oh, I'm this dirt, people stigmatize it so bad. It's frustrating. Like if you're an alcoholic, and the stigma is different for me and everybody I've heard. It's like, if you're struggling in alcoholism, you're not stigmatized as greatly as you are as if you're struggling, with opioids. It's frustrating. Why is there a difference?
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I suffered from both, but
Right.
the 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 stigma is attached to something that doesn't make sense. And we had Johan Hari speak, and I don't know if you've read his book. He talks about where the war on drugs comes from, but there's a disconnect, because in the 40s, 50s, 60s, people went very close to straight to heroin. It wasn't always that way, but that was it. And then in the 90s and the 2000s, it became that people came in, exactly as you said, through their prescription that led them to this next level down, to the next level down, and next thing you know, they're at heroin. And I think that stigma still comes from way back in the day, where the guy was stealing, knocking people over the head and taking their money and getting a fix. And
You're right.
you know that's something that's way outdated. We have what I would call gentlemen drug addicts these days.
Oh
uh,
my gosh, CEOs of
yeah,
companies. Yeah.
doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, all starting with a prescription for their bad back or their ankle or whatever.
Yes.
And it's terrible.
It is. And this is why I love, and I know you and I have spoke, this is why I absolutely love the banners. While, like you said, there's always going to be there are some, I'm not saying addiction is all pretty and roses and everybody, it was wonderful most of the time. There are tough times. I'm not here to candy coat it, but when you see these banners and you look at these faces, it's everybody's kid. And I've seen it said, and I've said it myself in so many groups, the three most dangerous words someone can say is not my child. Because and like as we discuss with fentanyl, it's thousands upon thousands that are lost. They're not even addicts. They
Right.
tried something one time at a party. And that's where I'm constantly telling even friends and family, and it's hard for me because every time I share, like today, again, while it's a privilege, I have to relive the loss. I talk about the hard times, and it's not easy. It's draining. I find myself it almost takes a little bit of, my wind out of me every time. And I think it'll always be like that, but we have to educate people, because fentanyl it's a whole game changer now. It's so much scarier because there's millions upon millions of counterfeit pills. People are at their, at parties, hey, here, try this Xanax, and that's it. They don't wake up, so, and people just always think, oh, that my kids aren't going to do that. I mean, it's not the case. We all have our part. We have to educate one another. So I'll continue to do it. If people want to scroll past my posts, or when I'm trying to raise awareness, do so, because here's the deal. At the end of the day, you or me on either side, I know I'm not going to change everybody's opinion, but I know I've already impacted lives along the way. And I'll continue to do that as long as I live, until God, as you said, has our purposes fulfilled here. I do believe we'll just keep going with it.
Well, before you go, and first of all, thank you so much for doing this. But before you go, I have to tell the story of how I know that we were on the right path. And that is that when I first met Marcie, she said, well, I've got these banners from Can You See Me? And I've got 18 of them. And we should hang them up at the event. And I was like, oh my God, 18 of them. How big are they?
Yeah.
Like, oh, they're about 6 feet wide. I was like, oh my God. But I thought there's this place at the location that maybe we could put them up. And when we got there, it turned out there were exactly 18 spots all the way around, and they looked perfect. And it was the most dramatic thing. It was, I heard maybe you or someone say, it's beautiful, but in this like super sad way.
That was me. It's beautifully heartbreaking.
Yeah. It was. So thank you for bringing them. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It really is an amazing statement.
I hope we can do that again. And I just want to let everybody know, this stuff, if you can see it, get trained on it. This isn't a commercial, but Narcan saves lives, and I carry it in my car. I give it out like candy. We have a space here at our center where you can get it. If someone has overdosed from opioids and you get to them within a reasonable amount of time, sometimes you can save their life by giving them a nasal spray of this. And all we can do is hope.
Right. Gerald, one of the things, and I don't know if you guys touch base, this is a very hard part for my story. And this is something I feel like we need to continue educating young people on. Isn't there a law that's in place where, say, for example, you and I were using substance, you overdosed, and I had to call 911, that you will not be held liable no matter what? Is that correct?
That is my understanding in some jurisdictions. I'm not sure if that is every jurisdiction, but I will look into that. I forgot what they call it. It's similar to a Good Samaritan law.
I thought it was everywhere now in the U.S.
It very well may be. I just don't want to give out bum information.
And I think it would be good, because it would be great, especially you, because you're dealing with a lot of people that are going to have relapses, or you're on the recovery end of it, with individuals daily, because like my brother was left to die. Nobody called until after the fact, and that is, I can't even tell you. I mean, that seems to be just so common because they're afraid, so they just leave them there dying when
Right.
they could have helped, if they didn't have Narcan, because they're afraid they're going to go to jail. So that's another thing we need to continue to educate people on, because that might save more lives as well.
Well, I've been shocked because in our area we have a safe passage program where people can call the police. In fact, I had a guy over the weekend. His parents called the police on him because he was doing heroin. The police came to the house, brought him to the police station, and called me and said, we need to get this guy into treatment. Let's help him. Which, in my mind, where did that come from? When I was out using,
Wow.
there was none of that. And so I think the world is changing. We're turning a corner, and
Right.
and people are seeing that these people don't have to die. And
No, that gives me all the feels, because that's what it's about.
yeah.
Something we didn't touch on, and I'll touch on it really quick, is the medical encounters. My Tony, several years ago had a medical issue due to a relapse, and I could just put it into these words. The nurse couldn't have been any more unkind if she tried. And mind you, my brother is as gentle as they come. But if stigma continues to filter through hospitals, doctors' offices, nursing care, it's going to continually discourage people from seeking out treatment. I mean, that to me is something that really needs to be at the forefront too, because I mean, how would anyone feel if they went to get treatment for something and were made to feel, terrible? You wouldn't want to go back.
Right.
So, I mean, we saw it firsthand as a family. So, I mean,
We're seeing, we're
we have
seeing
to
that
raise awareness in that area as well.
we're seeing that in support groups,
Oh, you're kidding.
and it drives me nuts. What, people are going into certain 12-step meetings and being told you don't belong here because we don't do that. We don't do that drug. And yeah, and so oh my, unfortunately, stigma is everywhere. But I do have a question for you, Marcie. What are some warning signs that families can look for? What should we be on the alert for so that we don't have to deal with what you've been through?
Well, like you said, I mean, it's a it's a fully loaded question because I mean, there's so many different signs. I mean, first thing is I think addiction always it definitely stems from mental health. It's somewhere at some time, maybe somebody's dealing with depression or anxiety and they want to, medicate it, whether it's alcohol or opioids. Always continue to check on your loved ones, your children, older adults in your family. Always start with checking on the mental health. Where are we at? We know that the people that we're with, we know when something's down and out. Talk to people. Changes in behavior. That's always a huge one. They start doing things that are like, for example, if your kids are suddenly not, in their bedroom with the door closed all the time, suddenly they're withdrawn and don't want to talk. Just their attitude all around changes. That's always a good one. Physical appearance is huge. The nodding out, you could, I was always able to tell by my brother's eyes if he was, using a substance, which was hard for me, but it was definitely a telltale sign. So physical appearance is huge. And for me, being a mother of, I have two young teenagers. I pay attention to all their social media platforms. I'm involved with their friends. I know what, for the most part, I mean, obviously there's going to be things I don't know, but pay attention to, what your kids are doing and what they're up to daily, what their interests are and their hobbies. And unfortunately, social media is, while there's a lot of benefits to it, there's a lot of danger to it now. I hear a lot, and this, I don't really have a lot of expertise, but I know there's a lot of drugs being sold on Snapchat. So, social media is huge. So I encourage parents of at least younger ones. We can't do that with older, but, pay attention to the platforms and snoop. Don't be afraid to snoop. That's why we're parents. You don't have to be the cool parent. Just be the parent that has knowledge. Someday, trust me, because I do have a grown son, they're going to look back and say, thanks. I get it now. I get what you were doing. So that doesn't mean that that's going to be foolproof because my parents did a lot of those things, but these are the things we can at least try,
Right. Rather say you tried and didn't than you didn't try.
Yeah. And another thing you had said, how some days you struggle, like, I don't want to get up in bed. I think, again, recovery or grief, find your tribe, I always say 4 quarters is better than 100 pennies. Have those select people in your life, whatever it is you're going through, that you can turn to for support when you're having a tough day. And I've learned through grief counseling, which it took me a while to realize I needed it because I was upset. I felt like people weren't meeting me where I was in my grief. People weren't bringing his name up. And I swear, I think someday I'm going to write a book on grief, and mark my words, I probably will, because it's such an awkward journey. Long after the funeral, I mean, the grief is never ending, and it's like, but through counseling, which I encourage, I've learned that learning to just communicate your needs, and that's if you're on the recovery side or on a grief journey, I can't get upset at people if they're not, guessing where I'm at. I need to just say to the people that are in my tribe, hey, I'm having a bad day. I need to talk about it for a few minutes. You know, so I've learned once I released other people's expectations where I was in my type of my grief recovery, it was such a weight lifted off of me because I wasn't upset with people, you know, and same goes for you. Find those people that are going to encourage you and pull you out of the trench, you know? So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, first of all, I have to say thank you so much. And I have to tell you that I'm stealing all these lines, like 4 quarters is better than 100 pennies. That is the line.
steal them all.
All right. All
Message
right.
to the message. We'll send you some bullet points.
There you go. There you go. So,
Yeah.
Marcie, I'm going to let you go. Thank you for doing this. This is amazing. And I
Oh,
look
you're
forward
so
to seeing
welcome.
you
It was a
soon.
pleasure.
Absolutely. So, all right, everybody. Thanks for joining us on Tuesday Talk. I believe Akil will be back next week. In the meantime, have a great week and keep everybody safe. Bye bye.
Awesome. Thanks. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.